Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Doing well. Had a good day yesterday. How about you?
Uh, Power went out at about 2 o'clock.
Really?
Yeah. The win was that it wasn't 18 degrees outside when the power went out this time.
Hmm.
So never really got cold enough to see our breath or have winter crystals on the inside of the window. So that was good, but had to miss an onboarding session for a new closer and a CRM onboarding session.
Man, that's annoying.
Man, dude, I at this point, uh, it feels like I'm never going to get caught up on like all the stuff that I've like kind of pushed off. And then last night I had this new prospecting activity come to mind of this thing that I think would be helpful to bring in like new business and new business, new relationships, but also doing it in a way that I will be interested in doing it, as opposed to just you know endlessly beating my head against the wall.
Yep.
So yesterday, I mean, it didn't suck, but it was just, man, I'm like in that zone. I'm going strong. We have a meeting, talk about content. We've got some big goals this week, and then right, and the power was out until about 6, and then it came on for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then went off again, and then came back on, and then it's been on since then. But it's just like, you know, uh, it's frustrating, right? And you try to not do like the whole like, man, like why does this keep happening to me kind of thing, because it's not just me. There's lots of people. However, it does feel like I'm never going to get caught up. Like end of month is essentially Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
so not super ready for that. Pipeline is a little unhappy due to just the weather and trying to get things started and everything else. And then the weather comes along and puts like a big old wrench in a couple of conversations that I was supposed to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been. I'm ready for this month to be over. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It was. When I was born, my mom tells me I was born in a blizzard, and it was like one of the coldest winters ever in Texas. And this is reminding me of that because I'm like, I'm done with February because I didn't really get to have a birthday this year because it was Wednesday, right smack in the middle of all this stuff. And so there was nothing.
Your birthday was last week?
Yeah, it was last Wednesday.
Man, now I feel terrible. I had no idea. I'm so sorry, Bill. Happy birthday, man.
Well, thank you. No one told me happy birthday, really, except the 90,000 people on LinkedIn who did it in DM because it told them to automatically, and it only said happy birthday.
It's overly prompting now on LinkedIn. Like they're trying so hard to create engagement that what they're not doing is they're not seeing that they're just creating these like very easy ways to just like shut down conversations, right? That little thumbs up thing that's in the bottom of your thing that you're just going to reply to does not encourage the conversation. It does not continue it to go on. It's just a very easy way for you to be like, hey, we're good.
Yeah, I saw this. Yeah, they try too hard. Anyway, so like my whole like Februarys aren't great for birthdays anyway, just weather wise, especially since I'm an outdoor type of guy. This one in particular was a little rougher.
A little rough.
Yeah. But I don't think it had anything to do with my birthday. That was just it was a bad Wednesday.
I feel terrible. I had no idea. Happy belated birthday, buddy.
I mean, I rely so heavily on Facebook half the time to tell me when people's birthdays are, except for, like my inner circle of 5 people that I'm related to or something. Yeah. My memory's not going to sustain that anyway. So,
or they're on a day of national tragedy, right? So those kind of stick out.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. Except for 11 would fit, stuff like that.
Levi's got some jokes.
Yeah, we always got jokes. We know that. That's like his primary play at the poker table. Like he can distract people. His bad card playing will get by. So.
Oh man.
And I hope I'm this spry at 50 and 60 and 70 and 80.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm okay with that.
Watched the 311 show on Friday. They played the Blue album front to back, and along with the B-sides. And the thing to remember is like these are 50 51, 52 years old now, and like they're still doing this thing that they love and enjoy. And I just think that that's endlessly cool, right? And they're doing it for the crew because obviously they don't need. I mean, I say obviously, but they're probably not hurting for money, but the crew is. And so they did the first 3 albums front to back, and then they announced actually on the show that they're doing the next 3 albums like front to back, and included in that is one of my favorite albums. So I'm very excited.
That's cool.
But yeah,
Was that like an email you got and it was like, hey, we're going to be going live and doing this thing and sign up here? Or how did you hear about that?
In January or in December, I kind of like refound 311, and I was like, I wonder what they do on their social kind of thing, And so I looked it up on Facebook and on Instagram, and then they were saying that they were having a live show of the second album the next night, and I was like, oh, I definitely want to go to that. And so I just kind of right place, right time kind of deal.
Oh, okay, cool, interesting. Yeah, I always find it interesting to see how non-marketer and salespeople communicate their stuff, because we kind of surround ourselves with that stuff a lot of times, and it's fun to see other like real companies how they market that stuff.
It's so funny because you say that, and we have this idea in our head of like what like a real company is and how it's not our company, and then like you go out and you look at some of these people and you're like, oh, you're not at all like this holistic kind of thing that I thought, like you're not whole in a way differently than how I'm doing it. You're just a little bit bigger. Okay, great. Right. Yeah. So sometimes that's incredibly validating.
It is. I think when I think of whole or real, I think of like product in the world, like tangible, but that's just bad programming.
That's so funny because you're a marketer.
I know. But I mean, like other marketers to me are other marketers. I don't go, man, I want to go check out some other businesses and see, really kind of, spread my wings, get my boundaries out there and think about what's other people doing. Other marketers are just other marketers to me. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting them and saying, no, I'm a business. I'm just saying my programming from growing up was like, oh, you have an auto mechanic shop. You have a real business, like I'm just over here marketing people and trying to make money.
So is a marketing agency a real business then?
It is. Don't get me wrong. I just, in my brain, it's weird. It's like, no, that's a bunch of marketers who got together. We're like, hey, come share my campfire, and we're going to do this.
Dude, hold on a second. This is hilarious. Okay, so you're a marketer, have been for a very long time, have worked at a couple of like very large agencies, and you don't view the thing that you do as a real business.
It's weird. It's head trash. I know. It's just weird. It's just weirdness. That's all. And I'm not like demeaning or saying that what I do is not important. Like none of that stuff. None of that. Like I'm not important. I'm not. It's just like it's not a traditional real business in my head.
Do you think that's helpful, or do you think it's hurtful to have that outlook?
I don't know if it's been anything to me at this point. This is new information to me. I don't think about this. I just thought about it when I said real business, and I've said this several times like before. It's like the first time I thought that thought, but like when I think real business, I go, oh, like someone who has like something to sell, specifically that I can hand them, that has a shop that I could walk into. But like we're in a different place completely from a commerce standpoint than when you and I grew up. Like,
yeah,
that buying something directly from like a manufacturer wasn't even really a situation, much less like e-commerce or all that other stuff. So like there's so many places now that literally manufacture and sell direct to customer through their website. Like that wasn't even a thing before. So
well, that's why things like Pier 1 and World Market and all that stuff are, quickly or slowly, depending upon who you're watching, are going away, because like you don't need their push. You don't need their shelf space, because you can build it on your own and do a much better job and have a much tighter control over the marketing.
Yeah, and not rely on them to drive your business sales.
Exactly.
And Walmart's been notoriously in the news for killing small shops for what they charge, and basically killing small businesses. But that was kind of on the small business too, where it's like you could have a different play and do nothing else. But for a while they were the play. There was that e-commerce play wasn't really a thing that was
I totally get that. I think that being able to go directly to the consumer is great. for a couple of reasons. A, you don't have to play games that you don't really want to play anymore, which is nice. B, you get a lot more control, direct marketing. Obviously, ownership of the marketing process is super important as well.
Yep. You don't give away money either. Every sale that's sometimes pretty high.
I mean, you can, right? You know, that's like the whole like affiliate model, honestly. But you just have a lot more control, and you don't have to play games that you don't want to play, which is really nice. So yeah,
totally. Yep. So I wrote yesterday.
Just nice.
You're curious.
I did not meditate yesterday. Okay. The power went out, and I was just like,
"Oh, perfect opportunity."
You say that, not mentally at the time.
which is like that's what they say, right? Like, so I did this on my kids. Like when my kids like hack me off, that's the perfect opportunity to practice breathing. Do I want to?
Oh yeah, no.
But I go. So it's the Hulk style breathing. You may not be familiar with it, but
I'm always angry. One of my clients, he sent me a text message between him and one of his clients yesterday, and this guy was kind of irritated and was kind of calling out my client. And my client wrote out this very nice, very detailed of like, here's what happened here, super sorry about this and everything else. And so he sends it to me and he was like, thoughts? And it was so funny. I was like, okay, how do I express this to this guy that while this is good, it's not actually helping him, right? Because you can't control tonality over a text message, right? So this guy gets to read it with whatever tone he wants. Yep. And there's a line in the text message that says, I'm happy to show you the emails if you want to see them. And I'm like, I know that you mean that well, but there's no way that in his current state that he's going to read that line and give you the benefit of the doubt. He's going to be pissed. So that line is a little bit cheeky. It's a little bit of your like inner child kind of like creeping it. Man, I'll show it to you if you want to see, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about it, and I was like, okay, what would Jocko do? Because he's this guy's a big Jocko fan, and he goes, he goes, my fault. I was like, versus the 4 messages you sent him explaining out this whole thing and how it's not your fault and how like you feel bad, but once again it's not really your fault and everything else. And he goes, yeah. What's funny is I'm having a hard time kind of rolling over on this one, and I don't even make any money off of it. And I was like, okay, so wait a minute. You're telling me that on account you don't really get paid on. You're doing this as a favor. You lose nothing at all. You look up to this guy, and you know you didn't take his path, and you're still having a hard time swallowing your ego to do the hard thing on an account that doesn't pay you. And he goes, yeah. And I was like, how are you ever going to do it on an account that does pay you? And he was like, I'll work on it next time. So I just thought that was so funny. What would Jocko do? And he got it instantly. Like I didn't even have time to like close the phone or go do something else. I was like, what would Jocko do? And then I kind of scrolled up and looked at his message again and was about to like pop out of there, and he just put my fault. And then I was like, okay, let's see if he does anything else. Because I just, it's one of the most powerful things on the planet when you can just like say, you know what, that's 100% my fault. What do you want to do from here? If you don't want to work with me again, I completely understand. You've made your decision. What do you want to do? They get to decide. I'm not talking you out of anything. Like this is the biggest problem with like client relationships and selling and everything else. How you enter that relationship is so important to what's going to happen for like the rest of that relationship. And if you don't do a good job of like setting the precedent of like, hey, let's work together. I'm a partner, not a vendor, and all of that stuff we talk about, it's a nightmare. It is a nightmare.
Absolutely.
So
that's fun. That's hilarious. That is. I think sometimes it's harder on stuff that you're not getting paid for to roll over. Sometimes for me, at least, because you have put your emotional effort into it because you're doing this for someone because you care about them or you want to serve them or there's some reason you didn't take money, right? And it's typically a reason that you have some sort of emotional attachment to that relationship in some way or another. And so I feel like for me, sometimes those are actually even harder because I'm like, I did this for this guy because I really wanted him to win. And this is how he treats me,
yeah.
I didn't even charge him. And this is how.
Well, this is not Yeah, so this is not one of those things where like it's just like a pure barter thing. He has partners, and so partner brought it in, and so he just does the work. So he doesn't really make any money off of it. And you're kind of hitting the nail on the head in the fact that like before you do this the first time and it goes amazingly well, it feels like there's no way, right? You feel like I think about Alice all the time because she walked into the room and was just going to sell Melissa on the fact that she deserved 2 pieces of candy for drinking like this much more water than she does on like a regular day to get 1 piece of candy. Mom, I think I deserve this piece of candy, and let me tell you why. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, watch her shoot this thing down. Like, it's going to be so epic, and it's not going to have anything to do with the stuff that normally indicates like whether or not she can have candy or not. Yep. And sure enough, she was like, well, like your rumors have picked up, and like mentally, I'm like, this never has any component or anything to do with whether or not she gets candy or not. She's just resisting to this because with the intensity that she came into the conversation, like this is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So when you show up and you were like, hey man, I'm happy to send you the emails. This is what happened and everything else. You're not like stepping into that thing, right? Where if you knew that it was your fault, right? If you knew that at some point you missed something, an expectation, the right hire, the right training, documenting your processes, something else like this. Like once you start to do that and you look at everything like through that lens, everything changes. There were so many people last week that were like standing around like in hotel lobbies at the same times, that I was. And they were like, oh my God, we're never going to find a room. And woe is me. And I can't believe all these people and ERCOT. And like, it was everybody else's fault. And in that kind of situation, largely it is. You don't really have a whole lot that you can do about it. But man, sitting around and like complaining about it is not helpful, like in the slightest. And so
the Jocko part right there, though, that I love is my fault. Now what?
What? Yeah.
So that's the part I think you're talking about right there. Okay, maybe it's not my fault. It's their fault. Great.
Yeah. Now, what can I do?
Now take ownership.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
Anyway.
Well, I got the writing done.
So question then, right? If I meditate twice today, does that put me back on the path for my BIL bet?
I don't know. Is would that for you? It depends what the goal is. It's always it's the giant question. What are you not measuring for? What are you optimizing for?
At this point, I'm trying to optimize just for getting reps in of sitting, right? Because like I do lots of journaling. I mean, a lot of journaling, right. and fairly introspective to the point that it might not be helpful anymore. But as far as like sitting, I don't really do that as often as I would like. So at this point, it's just much more about creating a goal and getting some momentum. So I would say that if I do five sessions this week, it's still a win.
Okay, cool. I think that I agree. So for me, I think it's interesting to think about when you're creating a new habit rather than punishing the losses. You reward the wins, especially when it's one that you're having a hard time grabbing a hold of.
Yeah.
I've kind of slid. It's part of our just conversations, right, over the last 9 or 10 months. It has helped me kind of go, but what do I really want out of putting this in place? I want to do it more. And if I punish myself every time, sure, that fits my parenting model of you do this, you get this, right? It doesn't really help me personally all the time get to where I want to go. And that's really what I want to do is get there. So it's like, how can I reward myself? And give myself a little grace on the bad days, but still keep accountable, right? Like, how do you find that balance? Because obviously if I got 3 weeks, it's like, all right, there's some consequences because it's life, but like,
it was so funny. When I get stressed out, I lose empathy, I lose kindness. Everything just becomes a task, even more so than it already is, right? So yesterday, Alice is having some stomach issues, and has got to drink some castor oil.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that like a real thing? I thought that was like in cartoons, like how like
real thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's not excited, but is in some pain, can't go to the bathroom, so castor oil, like do this thing. And she's just like, no, and like making a huge deal, like making it a huge deal because like she doesn't like it and everything. And I'm like, I get it. And so finally I was like, kiddo, like this either is upsetting enough to you that you're willing to take this or not. And if it's not, then that's okay. But the next step, you're really not going to want to do. And she was like, well, what's the next step? And I'm like, well, the next step is we go to a clinic. And I explained the whole process to her, and she was just like, oh yeah, I know. And I'm like, you have to make the decision now. So you can either drink this or we escalate and we go do the next thing. What do you want to do? She's like, I'll drink this. And then it was so funny because like Melissa was still in there and like, okay, just drink it. And I was like, she has to make the decision. Like the more you prompt, the more she's going to resist, because like the more that she gets to like kind of like hang out here in this moment. So she knows the rules. She knows what's going to happen if this doesn't like go the right way. And so then she drank it, and then everything was fine, about an hour later or so. So
well, that's good. Go on.
No, I think it's really good. But the interesting thing about it is like as a kid, that conversation doesn't go that way, right? It's just, drink this or punishment kind of thing. So we're not huge on like punishing the kiddo, but sometimes that also means that you have to just say, the standards, the rules, you now get to make your own decision, but it will get worse if you don't take action. But like in that moment, I'm like, just do it, just drink stuff, just drink, just do it. Yes, do it. And I'm like wanting to point like this at her, like very military-ish. And I'm like, okay, like that's not helpful. That's not going to do anything that I wanted to do. So just relax. But I don't know. I think that there's lots of things that in business that you don't want to do. All right. And you can very much be like my kid and be like, I'm not going to drink that right now. I'm not going to drink that right now. Everything's going to be fine. Things are not fine. You have to take action. So.
Yeah, I used to bemoan people who would sit in the anxiety rather than just like rip the Band-Aid off. Of course, like that's right there. That's like how long you guys spent in that circle of conversation, you know? But it's like, I always look at those situations, even when I'm feeling empathetic. When I'm feeling empathetic, I'm just better with my words. But like, would you rather just sit here and sit in your anxiety? I mean, because the conversation's not going away, or the task is not going away, or the project's not going away. Or would you rather just rip the Band-Aid off and just go, which is essentially what you did. You just provided some better context on why this was a good moment to act versus wait.
I mean, so speaking of anxiety, Melissa is somewhat anxious, and her mother and brother are more so than she is, right? And I don't say that with any kind of like negative or pejorative impact. They're just anxious people. So we go over to Al's on that Tuesday night, and they're very uncomfortable. But Alan and Ned are very warm. They're great hosts, super gracious, going out of their way and everything. And so we all go to bed, and the next day, I'm seeing these like little bitty like movements of anxiety in like Melissa, her mom, and her brother. And I had this very weird moment, right? Because I just finished something and I'm trying to type up something, and I'm looking around and he's pacing around the house, and she's just like sitting and she's just like doing the finger thing on the knee because she's like this uncomfortable. And I had this moment of like, how are you nervous? Like these people did everything for us, right? Like amazing fire and room to stay and food and like super nice and gracious. Because like this past year, I've kind of been thinking to myself of like, oh, on some level, I have some anxiety issues, right? Like things make me anxious and stuff like that. But I was sitting there in that room and I was watching these two people, and I was like, man, I don't get this. I don't understand. For as much as I'm, awkward in situations and don't really want to like necessarily seek out people, I can go get in front of people on a regular basis and not be uncomfortable about it.
Right.
And so then whenever Melissa's like, hey, I think I'm uncomfortable. Do you want to go home since power's on? Like, and I didn't want to come back home. I was like, no, I don't. This seems way cooler and like nice and break everything else. Part of the conversation for me mentally was just like, I have no idea what this is like to be here and to be like this uncomfortable. Right. So it's a little lame that I'm like trying to like, and I was like, look, if everybody wants to go, we can go. kind of thing. And so, of course, they all did.
Is that like your empty calendar? Like, does that give you anxiety to have an empty calendar?
It does now, right?
So it's like, I think the situation for me has gone to what if I can see they feel this way, what makes me feel this way. It's not this, but maybe something else does. Because like, what's the quote? Like, everyone's like in a battle you can't see. So
yeah, everyone's going through a battle you know nothing about.
Right. Which I mean, to a point, it's true though, right? Like they're
that's true.
Punching through some anxiety, and you're like, "What? This is awesome! Like, check out this fire!" Right?
Exactly. I'm like, this is where you grow. Like, this is where you improve right here in this moment. All right. And I get, man, I in that moment, right? Like, I've got these kind of like warring sides inside of me. I'm like, we're warm, we're safe. These people provided us a bunch of food. Like, why? How can you possibly be uncomfortable?
People.
Yeah. And then the other kindler, gentler philosopher person that I've kind of become over the past year, I'm like, I'm just not going to get this. Yep. Right. So like I can either say this is nonsense, or I can treat it as just like, hey, this is something here, which I want to do. Right. Like, I'm not trying to be like an inconsiderate ass or anything, but I just don't get it. And in those moments when you don't get something, you can have that moment of like, oh, I don't get this. And you can say, this probably isn't real, which is, diminishing and kind of dumb in my opinion. Or you can be like, hey, I don't understand this, but I don't really have to. So,
well, that's the my fault moment for you in those situations. It's like, okay, my fault. I'm not treating these people.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure.
What should we do?
Yeah, I wrote the blog post about it. Melissa hasn't read it yet, but I was like, hey, look, I talk about anxiety in your family, but I'm not trying to do it from like a diminishing way. If anything, I'm trying to diminish my own lack of knowledge, right? And appreciation over the fact of like, while I'm sometimes nervous, all my anxiety comes from like revenue woes, right? And not having a full enough calendar. I mean, because like I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, if I was sleeping in someone's house and I didn't know them, would I feel comfortable? Yes, is the answer, right? And when I was like, why do I feel comfortable when they don't feel comfortable? The only answer that I came up with is like, I'm just not worried about it, which is like probably not like the best answer, but I don't know. I don't know how much of it is like a kung fu thing. Like, I'm just not terribly concerned that the average person is going to be able to like do something that I'm not going to be able to like deal with. And I don't know how much of that comes into my comfort level in various kind of situations. I mean, I think it's probably a little crazy to assume that doesn't play a factor, but I don't know.
Yeah, you can't punch your way through revenue.
I mean, I've tried. Sure. I have tried. The only guys who punch their way through revenue are boxers, and I don't really want to go like the detached retina route. So
yeah.
Until then, I'm over here, doing it the other way.
Yep. All right. Well, I actually have an 8:15 today.
Oh man.
And I don't know if you do or not, but
I do. Yeah. So I have that, and then I've got to get all these reschedules on the calendar so that way I can kind of put down that open loop. You and I are meeting at 1. I have sales practice lab at 2. I have a private session with a new client at 3. And then I am meeting with an agency owner. I'm not exactly sure what all we're talking about. He does a bunch of demand generation, lead generation. So I think we might be talking about him maybe like buying access to my course into me for his clients. That way he doesn't have to do the standard, well, you're generating leads, but they're not good leads, so I can't close them. It's like, okay, You need a lead qualification process somewhere in play, right? Yeah. And most of these people want to do like the bare minimum ad-wise, so that way they can have lots of phone calls. You got to be able to qualify these phone calls, or else you're just going to waste mountains of time trying to sell to people who are not qualified to get it. And then later on, you can build out your marketing to qualify in place of that qualifying conversation when you're really good at it and deliberate and intentional. But until you have that marketing built out and you know what marketing you should be doing, the sales conversation, is the best place to qualify the leads and figure out like what they see value in, what's important to them. And then you build out the marketing based upon those conversations.
Totally. Absolutely. That's where everybody should start with the customer. So
I mean, you like all these people who create these like overly massive, super complex funnels so that way they never have to have a conversation with someone. You're making it so much harder than it has to be. Just have a conversation
Yeah.
Hey, if I was going to charge $1,000 for this, and you're in this thing, I don't know that you need this, but if I was going to charge you $1,000 for this, what would make it worth it?
Right.
Go have that conversation lots of times, and you'll figure out exactly what people in your target audience are going to spend $1,000 on, and then you can figure out if you can do those things.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a much longer conversation about pricing and value.
Yes. Yes.
We got to roll for now. So
yeah, we got to roll for now. Sorry, I got wrapped up.
It happens. All right. Well, thanks to Michelle and to Levi for joining us today, and we will see you guys.